made you instantly realize this friend is not a real friend? Story 1. I had been giving rides to a girl I thought was my friend, to and from school and high school. She wasn't really supposed to ride with other teens, but due to her mother's work hours, we could easily pull this off. I thought we were close. One day, while on the way home, my brakes went out. We were about 2 blocks from her gated neighborhood. I managed to roll in safely and parked at her house to call a tow truck. She flipped, told me I couldn't stay. She knew my brakes were not working, as she had also been terrified when we couldn't stop. She said she wanted to go to a movie that weekend with other friends and her mom would ground her if she saw me at the house. I offered to lie and say I only stopped there as my car malfunctioned on my way home. I had to pass her neighborhood on my way home anyways. She refused, started to scream at me. She didn't care what happened, I had to go. Started to call the guard at the front gate to tell them I had broken in and was threatening her. I left her and that friendship that moment. I managed to roll my car slowly to a mechanic not too far away, but never forgot the feeling of knowing I could have been seriously hurt and she wouldn't have cared. She wanted to see a movie. She had the nerve to sheepishly call and ask me a couple days later if I could give her a ride to school. Told her I was too busy and no longer had time. After all, I wanted to help her obey her mom's rules. She rode the bus till she graduated. Story 2. When they loved the idea of me shining but behind their shadow, I could never do or achieve anything above them. And when I did, they would get jealous. Story 3. I had this friend in school. Each year there was a fun fair in our city. All students received vouchers for a drink and something to eat. This friend complained the whole day that she had no one to accompany her to the fun fair. So stupid me offered to go with her. Once we arrived, we met another friend of hers. And another, until we were a group of 5 or 6 people. I didn't know anyone and was basically just walking behind them. This friend took me aside and said, "My friends think you are annoying, and we would like you to leave." It was a pleasure to see that she failed her exams a year later. Story 4. At lunch, she was sitting with her boyfriend. I was sitting with our friend circle. She came up to me, guilted me into sitting with her and her boyfriend, and then proceeded to ignore me for the rest of lunch. She didn't care about me. She just didn't want me talking to the friend circle that she had abandoned for her boyfriend. When I pointed this out to her, she called me a jealous. Ah, high school. How I don't miss thee. Story 5. When I finally opened up about what was really going on in my life, and she said that it was all too much for her to hear about, she straight up never called me back. We used to be best friends. Story 6. When I was raped, my friends all disappeared. The guy who raped me wasn't even in our friend circle and went to jail for another crime. It wasn't he said she said, it was very obviously rape. I lost all of my friends, and when I confronted a couple of them after going to therapy, they said, "We believed you. We just didn't want to deal with the drama." I had never even talked about the rape with them. I was just less entertaining when we hung out because I was traumatized. These are people who I let stay at my house whenever. I had a good job, so I bought them things. I was always the driver and always the person they would turn to when they needed something. It was a hard lesson to learn at 16, and I didn't actually learn it then. I just internalized it and believed I was overreacting and I had done something wrong. I still believe the best in everyone, but man, that belief gets shaken quite a lot. Now I'm friends with my husband and kids and don't bother with anyone else. Story 7. All she talks about it herself and her problems. Granted, she has a lot, but never asks about me or my life until she realizes she just bypassed my attempt to want to talk about something in my life bothering me and continued to talk about herself. Story 8. Friend A warned me that friend B was openly disrespectful, even hostile when speaking of me when I wasn't around. They got into an argument. Friend B sent me screenshots of their conversation to get me on their side, but there seemed to be whole sentences missing. When I asked for clarification, they called me dumb. Friend A showed me all the missing messages where they called me much worse than just dumb. Friend B lost 2 great friends for good after that. Story 9. I had one friend go and tell my boss I was job hunting. Had a few steal from me. Had one blame me when she stole something. I've had quite a few deliberately trigger my trauma to the point where I stopped telling people about it. Story 10. Her dad died and I made sure that I was there to listen and support in any way she needed me to. My granddad, who I was very close to, died and I didn't hear from her for 3 months. Story 11. When he stole my checkbook, forged my signature, and took money out of my account. This was after I let him live with me and my family for 2 years after his parents kicked him out in high school. Story 12. Only hit me up when they needed something. Was a roommate. Didn't give me any bill money because they were waiting on unemployment. So I went through their mail from unemployment one day. Turns out they had been getting paid for months. This was confirmed by mutual friends and his girlfriend. I moved out and shut all the utilities off that were in my name. Went back to get a few things and they looked at like they wanted to kill me. Sorry to end your free ride. We had been friends for 25 years. Haven't talked to them since. That was 2020. Story 13. Anytime I had good news, she'd find an instant way to downplay it. I got the job. Ha, you're excited about that hourly? My crush just texted me about hanging out, right? Like, you have money to do cool. The gym is working. I'm down 8 lbs. It's water weight, sweetie. Chill. Literally nothing that made me happy could come out of my mouth and be celebrated in kind. This was someone I grew up thinking was so cool, but only made me feel like to be around. I finally broke away and it pissed her off so bad, she actively spilled my secrets and tea to folks who had no business knowing that much stuff about me. Oh well. Story 14. Riding in my best friend's car in our early 20s, telling her about how my relationship with my mother was becoming so toxic and crumbling before my eyes, she interrupted me to ask that I be quiet during her favorite part of the song that was on the radio. When that part was finished, she told me I could resume my story. I was pouring my heart out. I was young and devastated, and even then I knew that was a really messed up thing to do, and it instantly changed the way I viewed her as a friend. We were going on 7 years of close friendship, and it was finished in that one car ride. Story 15. When he would only take and never even offer to give back. Always with the, I left my money at home but I'll totally pay you back. Never paid anything back, ever. Other friends and I would call him out on it, but there was always an excuse. Eventually, he screwed over another mate at a gig they went to. Only thing he paid for was a drink. Had another mate even pay for his ticket in with some BS reason. So we all collectively decided we don't need or want him around anyway. He's barely made an attempt to keep in touch in 10 years and we certainly haven't. Story 16. When I got back to the US from a trip to South America, I had $7 to my name. The next morning, a friend asked me to go to breakfast so I could tell him about my trip. I said I didn't have any money and couldn't afford it. However, he said that's okay, and off we went. When we arrived at the breakfast joint and the server came over to get our order, my friend pointed at me and said, "He isn't getting anything." Story 17. I went to court the day after I was almost killed to get a restraining orders against my abuser. My abuser beat me with a baseball bat and I almost died. I was black and blue, and at one of the lowest points of my life. This friend criticized what I was wearing to court. I was in leggings and a The Office hoodie. She told me I should have dressed professionally since I was in the courthouse. I had to remind her I was nearly murdered the night before. The friendship did not go on much longer after this conversation. It was heartbreaking that someone I thought I was so close with was so shallow and focused on my appearance, rather than the fact that I was brutally assaulted. I think though I needed to look professional for the judge to take me seriously. Needless to say, the judge saw my bruises and immediately issued a protective order. Story 18. When I was babysitting her kids, things were going great. We would hang out all the time, have movie nights and just talk and chill. But the second she no longer needed a babysitter was the second I got kicked to the curb. No explanation, not even a text back. Some people will act like your best friend until they no longer need you. They're lost though. Story 19. Him and his girlfriend asked if they could spend Christmas Day with me, my husband, and our children because otherwise they'd be at home alone all day with only junk food to eat. Neither of them could cook. I organized transport over and home again after. Neither of them could drive either. I cooked us all a full Christmas dinner. I organized fun games and activities so it wouldn't be boring. My friend and his girlfriend didn't offer to help with anything. Not cooking, not serving, not cleaning up, and not paying. They wouldn't play the games and weren't interested in the activities. They just wanted to sit on the sofa and eat. Then came the complaining. They complained because we had Pepsi instead of Coke. They complained that we had semi-skimmed milk instead of full fat. They complained that my husband wouldn't play video games with them. He was busy with the kids while I cooked. They complained that there wasn't mashed potatoes as well as roast potatoes. They complained because they wanted different vegetables from the ones I was serving. They didn't thank us for anything. Needless to say, I was glad when they went home. Friendship didn't survive long after that. Story 20. When she tried to poison me with Drano, she was moving away the next day hoping she would not get caught. She was just way too insistent I eat lunch she made, tipped me off. Story 21. I totally supported him for years because he was going through a rough patch. Not entirely, but anytime we went out, beers, golf, movies, concerts, food was on me. He always protested a little bit and said he didn't want to take advantage. I had noticed that he hadn't lifted a finger to help himself in quite a while and was cool sponging off his mom. Whenever I mentioned ways I could help besides giving him or ways he could make money, he got shitty and said people weren't helping him with his depression. I tried, leading a horse to water, etc. I fell on hard times and couldn't afford to foot the bill for everything. Man, I felt so dumb when he got pissed because I asked him to cover part of his meal and drinks at the bar. Story 22. When they won't sacrifice equally over an extended period of friendship. Like they won't travel to you but expect it back, won't call to make plans but is okay doing so when you do it, speaks to you in ways that are disrespectful, but it isn't done to all friends, just some or one. If your egg will make sense, targeted roasting, etc. Story 23. After 20 years of friendship with a woman I once knew well, I went through a divorce. She almost immediately stopped speaking to me, left her husband of 25 years and moved out, and made a run for my soon-to-be ex-husband. My soon-to-be ex wanted nothing to do with her romantically and flatly rejected her advances. She eventually crawled back to her husband, where she is today. As I later found out, her 3 siblings had sat her down for an intervention, asking her what she was thinking for hurting her nice husband and her good friend, me, and for potentially ruining her childhood friendship with my ex, as their families were old friends in this city and went way back. She pretended not to know what they were talking about and carried on with her plan. At the time, I was blindsided, alternately crushed, and pissed at her betrayal and for her decades-long false friendship with me. The realization that she was this close to him for 2 decades just to be close to my husband is still mind-bending 7 years later. But I have to laugh at the social embarrassment she brought upon herself and her current state of misery. My now ex is remarried, and I am dating. He and I co-parent and get along very well, and our kids are loved by us all. His friendship with her is no longer. She has eaten herself into a ball that is almost as wide as she is tall. You reap what you motherfucking sow. Story 24. When I was at my lowest point in life, the friends that came to visit are the ones I still have, and the ones that didn't bother, I cut them off and lost contact with them purposely. Life is too short for that. Story 25. Back in my first year of college, I used to have a group of friends, like 7 dudes with me included. We always hang out together and we're used to have this group chat where we discuss about anything from class subjects to random things. After a year, I noticed that one of the guys, let's just call him Randy, keeps getting excluded. Not invited, or informed to group hangout while they're talking smack behind his back. And the unofficial leader of the group actually made a whole new group chat, inviting everyone, myself included, except Randy without his knowledge. I know what it feels to be left out. I experienced that in middle school and it's really awful. I stopped hanging out with them and I starts hanging out with Randy. He's quite eccentric but a very good person at heart. We've been friends for more than 6 years and he still got my back. Story 26. When they made constant demands of me no matter what I was dealing with on my own, as I was barely functioning with no consideration for that, and at the same time being unable to be happy for or ever celebrate any milestones or achievements in the progress that I did make. Thinking that I expected them to live up to my own expectations for my own life and calling me a narcissist for all of it. Story 27. She broke up with her boyfriend and hooked up with me and mine for a crazy night. We were all adults, consensual, and discussed it beforehand and afterwards. We repeated the experience at her request. 2 weeks later, she decided to try and get back with her boyfriend and told him about her escapade. He apparently refused to take her back if she had slept around, so she told him Mai and I had drugged and raped her. Yeah. Bonus. I am myself a rape survivor and she knows this. I felt disgusted with myself with the simple accusation of doing such a horrendous thing. Years later, she reached out, apologized, and we ironed things out. Of course, things never went back to before, and I am sad I lost a friend I liked dearly. Story 28. She told me she'd talked with my boyfriend, my first serious, and he was breaking up with me. Then, as I'm crying and upset, she tells me she needs to go because she needs to talk to her. Yeah, fucked up. Story 29. One of my high school girlfriends spent the summer away. When she returned, my friend told her, "Damn, this dude really loves you." And then he slept with her. Turns out neither of them were my friends. Story 30. My best friend for years threw a party and trashed my house while me and my family were on vacation. She also stole my vape, gave her friends my clothes and swimsuits, and took my car for multiple joyrides. Then once people start hearing about it, she goes around telling everyone how sorry she is and how horrible she feels, how she is so scared she will lose me as a friend. I never heard anything from her other than, "I didn't do anything wrong." Story 31. Tried to hang out with them often but always declined. But every time they do want to hang out, it involves fixing something, help them move stuff. And once that's done, it's thanks. See you, I have stuff to do. You might be friends with them, but they are not friends with you. You're just the only one available to do something for them. Story 32. She said within 2 weeks of having met that she was telling people I was her best friend, told me completely unprompted that her boyfriend, whom I knew, had been raped in the past, and she was worried she got an STD from him as a result. She did not discuss this with him as far as I can tell. Shit-talked everyone to me, including people I knew and loved, including authority figures I valued in my life, including a homeless woman parked in front of a church where she worked as a pastor. Was the victim of every story she told. No, really. Everyone was out to get her. Everyone said the most unhinged imaginable to her. Everyone was leading a witch hunt against her. Even some of the nicest people I knew. Diagnosed herself with narcolepsy right in front of me, in my own house, as a direct response to me venting about all the sleep studies I was currently going through, to get diagnosed with a sleep disorder that mimics narcolepsy, and is the main reason why I can't drive. Also diagnosed herself with OCD years before I met her. I hadn't been diagnosed at that point, or I might have killed her for appropriating a disorder that occasionally makes me want to commit suicide, outed a child from her church as non-binary to me, without knowing how I felt about that, or if I would tell anyone else. Was the reason I never came out to her because then everyone would know, including my family. Made all these promises about me being invited to a Ren fair with her friends in Texas and her wedding in the Bahamas. Cut me off the moment she moved away and completely forgot I existed. I was not invited to a Ren fair in Texas. I was not invited to her wedding in the Bahamas. I heard her marriage didn't last a year. Story 33. When you start to change who are in a negative way. A good friendship should help both parties be better people, through encouragement, etc. If your friend is constantly sending snapshots of other people's conversations, you bet they're doing it with your conversations too. Story 34. Had a serious family emergency and had to dip out of a planned event I was at. Found out after I left, my extremely close friend and mutual acquaintances were talking about me behind my back for having to go bury a family member. All of them reach out to me yearly and send me friend requests and DMs asking why I no longer associate with them. Yeah! Instant adjustment of who was important to me was made when I found out. Story 35. One red flag. Was she always said that it was unnatural that my boyfriend and I didn't fight over anything. We still don't. Meanwhile, she would start fights just for the makeup. Story 36. She was saying awful things about me behind my back. I was completely blindsided because she was my best friend that I treated like a sister. She abruptly stopped speaking to me with no explanation. About a week later, my boyfriend dumped me. Turns out they were sleeping together for months. Story 37. When my wife cheated on me with his girlfriend and he said I should have seen it coming. They knew I was not okay being poly, but apparently he always had a thing for my wife, and so when the opportunity presented itself, he was cool with them dating and her divorcing me. Also, he was the best man at my wedding. Story 38. It was my birthday, and my best friend's boyfriend called to wish me a happy birthday. He then hesitated, said, "Hold on a second," and walked into the room she was in and dropped the phone in her lap. She, disgruntled, picked up the phone and we talked for a few minutes. It occurred to me a week later that the only reason she talked to me was because her boyfriend physically forced her to. I felt like an idiot, because I don't want anyone to be forced to talk to me. I want friends, not hostages, you know? And I have no idea how long that was going on. How long was she only reluctantly talking to me because her significant other was making her? So I stopped reaching out entirely. It's 2 years later, and the only contact we have now is happy birthday and thanks. Story 39. when I tested them to see how long they'd go without reaching out first. Clearly, I had been pushing the friendship for that long. The only time they eventually did, which was a while later, they wanted a favor. Story 40. Helping someone who is never thankful for what you do for them and always plays the victim. You can't help a person who blames everyone else for their problems. Had a friend who has tragedy dumps all the time. Then she wonders why nobody wants to hang with her anymore. Do the math, sister? Story 41. We made plans to go to this bar this one night. I literally got there when she texted me that she wasn't going to be able to make it because her friends made other plans. Didn't even ask if I wanted to join. Never spoke to her again after that. Story 42. I was pregnant with my second baby, and she seemed annoyed that she didn't have someone to have a drink with. Then, while talking to her on the phone, she brought up the fact that it would be funny if you died during childbirth and your husband accidentally recorded it. I'd show your son every day for the rest of his life to remind him he's the reason his mommy's dead. Never spoke to her again after that. Story 43. What's a friend, exactly? Someone you hang out with but have very light, not personal talks with. Someone you have deep, very personal talks with but very infrequently. I'm old and still trying to figure out what friendship is and who are friends. I really feel that with instant and constant communication available, I have my phone 24 hours a day. I'm much more lonely now than decades ago. Now I know I'm missing people constantly, rather than, "Oh, I've been away from a phone all day, how are you?" That's a phrase I haven't heard in a long time. I find myself hoping to find texts from my friends and being disappointed 90% of the time. I'll find a way to adapt and get better, but this sucks. Story 44. Oof. I realized my drinking had become an issue and decided to go rehab. I decided to only tell the one friend why I was going away for the next while. The person I saw as my best friend. He cut me off, wouldn't take my call before going in, then later I saw him missing from an online friends group we had. Then noticed a lot of other friends missing from group chats and stuff. Found out he talked a lot about me to all our mutual friends, calling me a pathetic drunk and just a lot of lies and made up stories. A lot of those in our friend group decided to cut me out of their lives too, seeing I was nowhere to be found to respond, and they took him at his word. I had a few people get in touch, still being Facebook friends or whatever, which is how I heard about what he said. But I'm 4 years sober, happy, and have some real good friends. Story 45. Friends in HS. Best man at his wedding. Went out together as couples for a while. My mother died. No show at funeral. Less than a year later, my father died. My wife called him and said I could really use him there. No show. Haven't heard from him since. This was about 30 years ago. Story 46. When she acted like me around others, especially her boyfriend. Deg. I bought a baby blue dress that I love and complimented my body. She said she hated the way it looked, and when tried one on, and didn't suit her, nor did she love it. A few days later, I wore the dress. Her other friends complimented my dress and even told me it looked great. The very next day, she bought it and told everyone she loved it, but I could tell she hated it. Her boyfriend thought it was strange and even told me about it. Deg. Every suggestion I made, she would say it was a dumb idea, but if her boyfriend or her other friends agreed with me, she would change her mind quickly. Deg. When she would dye her hair like me, Deg, she would often dress like me, including shoes. She has a different style than me. It got too creepy and uncomfortable that I went no contact with her. When I got engaged, she was upset and hurt because she didn't want me to be happy. Story 47. I've always been that kind of friend who is always there for other people. Even if they call me up at 3 a.m. in the middle of a snowstorm to come pick them up. I've always been reliable. But then I realized when I finally needed something, even when it wasn't a big something, and they were never available and always had an excuse and always ignored me and could never be bothered to lift a finger but yet had no issues constantly asking me for favors. That's no friend. Story 48. She blew her stack because I texted a comment that was sarcastic but came off as creepy. I apologized but said I didn't deserve to be treated like that, as we had been friends for 9 years and I had never acted inappropriately towards her in person. She did not apologize herself. I realized she truly didn't think she had done anything wrong. I also realized that if I didn't text her, I would never hear from her. Later on, I ran into her husband and found out that they are now separated and she is living with another man. And she had dropped a number of her friends. So she had really gone off the deep end. It wasn't me. Story 49. A few years ago, I was in the car with my friend coming back from a night out. I started to freak out when I couldn't find my phone, being certain that I left it at the restaurant. She started to laugh uncontrollably. She called my phone, and turns out it was stuck under my seat. I was so relieved and looked at her so happy that I found it. I saw he face changed to disappointment. I straight up asked her if she wished I had lost my phone, and that said yes while laughing. It was at this moment that I realized she would always be happy of my misfortune. Many other things happened after that, and I can happily say that she is not in my life anymore. Edit. Typo. Story 50. When she got busted for stealing at work and tried to blame it on one of our other coworkers. When I knew it was her and had the coworkers back, she threatened me. Didn't take me long to see that if she will do that to him, she will probably do it to me. Never trusted her again. Story 51. We went out to lunch and my friend told me a story about how she and her husband wanted to write their friends into their estate plan. She then asked if I was financially sound and if I needed anything. I told her things were okay with me, and her estate plan sounded very thoughtful. Then, she asked me the same question about 6 months later. Truth is, she was just trying to find a way to pry into my finances and to see how much money I'm making. The whole estate plan story was a lie. Story 52. I met my husband, who is brilliant and dignified and has integrity. He was so in love with me, and he was so accepting of who I was that I got to be myself for maybe the first time in my life. He looked around at the old friends from childhood and said, "Seriously? Would you be friends with these people if you met them today?" The self-respect he helped me cultivate just made them vibrate right out of my life. He encouraged me to focus on the healthier friendships I had built in more recent years with people who also had self-respect and integrity. I don't miss those old friends. Not one bit. Story 53. When they blocked me on every single social media platform and also blocked my phone number completely out of the blue, no argument, no reason to think anything was wrong, nothing. It's been almost 2 years and it still hurts sometimes. This happened months before I was supposed to be a bridesmaid in their wedding. Sucks that I'll never get an explanation. Story 54. A friend for 58 years now. We are both 63. I showed up for her when she needed me. Then I saw she didn't show up for me. I pulled back. She calls and wants me to come visit, but it's about her. I've been sick since COVID started, and I can't even imagine traveling. She doesn't suggest coming to me. It really started when it was her 50th birthday bash at a country club. I sat with the people I knew, her mom, who I absolutely loved, and her sister-in-law. At one point, she came to ask me to move to another table because this was for family. She was a part of my family since we were 5 years old. I considered her family up until then. I ended up staying at the table, but it all changed for me. Hurt my heart. Story 55. I thought I was the side friend for a long time, until my 2 best friends went on a trip to Saskatchewan to maintain a house they bought for 4 months. Turns out I cared enough to write a note for them on the road, and actually teared up when they left, and I don't think they realized they meant that much to me, because after they came back they said, "It just wasn't the same without you, man." We don't hang out all the time by any means, but it's the same as if I was there the day before. Sorry, I know this isn't what you asked for. Just felt kinda sad in this thread NGL. Wanted to share something nice. Story 56. Texted me by accident, complaining to someone else I talking too much about my abusive ex in group conversations, saying I was all in my feels again. I'm on the spectrum. Talking things out is how I process things, and another friend had asked me about it, so I felt okay sharing. When I showed her the text meant for someone else, she said, "That's just how they know me." And she needs to keep her house a safe space and not have me trauma dump all over her guests. She would always claim her living room was the feelings couch for everyone to cry together. Just not for me, I guess. Story 57. When she went from sharing a bottle of wine with me to telling my BF that I wasn't that pretty. I was in the room. She had the hots for my BF, even though she was married to his best friend. And we weren't in high school. She's in her 40s. Some people never grow out of being a mean girl. Story 58. My friends in high school added me to a Discord chat. Since it was a pre-existing chat on a server I'd been in for a while, it showed all of the previous messages as unread. One of the very first messages was, "God, the hot topical is so annoying. She'd be much easier to deal with if I were high." That was the beginning of the end of my friendship with that whole friend group, as I increasingly realized they were more my bullies than anything else. Story 59. When I went to a party with her, I got a little too drunk. We stopped to use the restroom at a casino where I passed out in the bathroom, and she left me and never spoke to me again. LOL. Story 60. A friend was constantly asking me for huge favors. I often did a lot for her even though I never asked her for a favor unless I was really in need, which was almost never. I suspected I was being used. The first time I said no to one of her favors, she stopped speaking to me and now is rarely in touch. Story 61. I, 43, don't have any friends, and when I say that, it's not hyperbole. For example, the only birthday wishes I get are from family. I have my family but no friends. Not really sure why, but it has been this way for a long time. Not even sure how I feel about it. Anyway, when I got married, my wife, who is very social, of course had a hard time narrowing down bridesmaids. I had the opposite problem, apart from my brother, who would be in the groom party. Anyway, I ended up asking two guys who I was closest with, work colleagues. They are nice guys and we did lots of social stuff together, and back then, I would say we were friends. However, on the night of the Bucks party, one of them got drunk and asked me in front of everyone, "Why did you pick me to be a groomsman?" I pretended not to hear, but that stung, still does. Story 62. We were friends since we were 11 years old. She was the maid of honor at my first wedding. She was by my side when I was widowed young with two small children. She had right-wing tendencies, but they really came when she started posting on Facebook, and Trump ran and won. She never said directly that she voted for him until 2020, when she said she wouldn't vote for him again. I posted on my Facebook page about an idiot running for Senate in my state, and part of her platform was more benefits for married people. The candidate was pro-family, as long as your family looked like hers. My friend went on a rant under that post about how it's about time married people got benefits and she was sick of all the freebies single parents got. I asked her to specify, and all of her examples were of people pretending not to live together and not getting married while having children because they didn't want to lose benefits because of being over the limit for household income. She didn't want to hear it. She and her husband were turned down for subsidized daycare because they were a mere $500 over the limit. Again, this was household income, not a penalty for being married. I pointed out I was denied for being $28 over the limit because it was based on household income not free for single parents. This was October 2020. I never spoke to her again after talking with her pretty much daily for years. Story 63. As soon as she got a boyfriend, she started ignoring me. Conversations between us were mostly from my side, and I thought only I was talking. Her only responses were yes, no. I stopped initiating, and then she never spoke or texted again.